Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Divine Attributes, revisiting the Quranic concept of Allah. And this is part 3 of this series on divine attributes. These are the references, and this is our contact. Now, first what I did is that I have gone back to Surah Al-Fatiha and added this slide, lifting the curtain to look into the first scene of exploring the Quranic guidance for mankind. I left this title because I thought it's quite exciting. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So over here, the meanings of Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim have been noted. Allah, I've highlighted Allah because we are talking about Allah today. Rahman and Rahim, these are his two divine attributes, has sent down this supreme book so that the responsibility which he has assumed for the nourishment of the things of the universe and mankind becomes fulfilled. So that is important. We know that Allah has certain program and scheme as far as this world is concerned and our place within this world. That is, man has been created with choice and intent and has a specific purpose according to the Quran. This nourishment is not possible without the guidance of Wahi. Since in the human world, the responsibilities of Allah are fulfilled through human hands, hence it is essential for the men of Allah that whatever intention they make for any task, its aim is the completion of this program of Allah. We have gone over this point previously, that Allah has certain program and a scheme of his in which man has to fit into it. And man can only fit into that scheme in case man follows Allah's directions, Allah's guidance as given in the Quran. So if man does not do that, then man becomes part of the man-made system. So as a result, all those responsibilities which Allah has taken on himself, man simply, firstly, he doesn't become even aware of those responsibilities. Secondly, he cannot enable himself to carry out those responsibilities. Next slide is some points of general interest. We have seen that the Quran directs our attention to the real issues of life on this planet and then invites us to create that psyche using its guidance to help Allah fulfill the goal and purpose of his creation called Adam. So important is that Allah has got certain plan and Allah cannot carry out that plan unless man fits into that plan and carries out those responsibilities on behalf of Allah. This might look very strange, but the fact is, once we go through the Quran, we will see that wherever Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen is mentioned, Quran is asking that Jamaat to come together and carry out these responsibilities which are noted in the Quran. In this regard, the Quran presents the outline and some details of its message which man can understand using his intellect and reasoning. So we have to look at our own intellectual power and intellectual prowess which is given to us and its ability to reason and think rationally from this aspect, that it is given to us to carry out all those responsibilities which are noted in the Quran. The Quran puts both choices before man, i.e., if the collective system in the world is created based on his intellect alone, then there will be serious flaws in this collective way of life. The Quran calls it fasad, which means an imbalance, and it also means that if the things are meant to be in certain way according to the permanent values, and if these are not, then these are going to create chaos and conflict in the world. And bloodshed, obviously when human beings fight with each other, they resort to violence, there will be bloodshed. And this will also create fear and grief. And a lot of fear is created by man deliberately when he is not guided. The world of 2025 is an example of the man-made system. The second choice, which is described in the Quran, is the option of establishing the system of deen, which, if established by man, will make his world free from all the flaws created by non-Quranic minds. And we have gone through this aspect a number of times, that what is the procedure we have to adopt, which is given in the Quran in order to establish the system of deen. The Quran lays down a process and procedure for establishing this system so that those interested in its guidance, and that is the point, those who are interested in this guidance can not only follow it, but can also keep checking their progress by referring to the signposts as noted within its folds. So Quran does not deal with, as far as the system of deen is concerned, something invisible or abstract. Quran says that you have to follow that procedure, and then illuminates it with signs that if you are following this path, then these signs will appear on this path and you will be sure that you are following the right path. The concept of Allah based on divine attributes is part of this procedure, which helps us to convert our psyche, ourself, from a non-Quranic outlook to the Quranic vision. And this is very interesting because Quran points to the non-Quranic outlook as well, where it says that when man is not guided, this is how he is going to behave. And then Quran says once man becomes guided, then this is how he is going to behave. To the Quranic vision, so that by coming together with unity of hearts, we can progress towards this system called Deen. Now, next slide is, why do we need a model in our life? We spend life between the real self, the ideal self, and the odd self. And a very simple example of this real self, ideal self, and odd self is that, for example, somebody wants to become a doctor, and that is their ideal self. And real self is that they do not have adequate education yet to become a doctor. So what they should do is that they should acquire that education, that training before becoming the ideal self as the doctor. And this is in a short term. And the odd self is that if somebody wants to become a doctor, but his parents want him to participate in their big business, and that becomes an odd self. So that is why there can be a conflict between ideal self and odd self. And we see these examples around us, that human beings want to achieve one thing while their relatives, friends, and parents want them to do something else. So there a conflict arises. But in the case of the Quran, it's very simple. Quran says whatever you want to do, even under man-made system, always keep in mind that lofty aim, that life will not end with death and life will go beyond death. You should aim at developing yourself by coming to the Quran and learning all the permanent values, divine attributes, and acquiring Iman and doing salih deeds. And that is within the reach of everyone if they know about it. We need some aim and goal in life. Success in life is generally defined by the environment in which we are brought up. Again, very simple. In a man-made system, if we ask people, we will see that their definition of success and their goals in life will all be going around the material values. Whereas the Quran is asking us to have a loftier aim than just the material values, which will get you through this man-made system. Our desires seek for some purpose in life. Mostly this purpose is related to the environment in which we are brought up. And this is based on egocentric thinking. So man has to grow out of this egocentric thinking that all the time looking after their own vested interests, their own selfish, should I say, aims. So they have to go beyond that. We are influenced by our family and environment. We see the effects of this all around us. Grow from weakness to strength, feel in need of help. So while we are, for example, children are weak and then they gradually gain strength depending on the environment in which they're brought up, and then they become adults and they firmly stand on their own feet. And during that, if they feel need for help, they are provided that help. So feeling a need for help is part of growing ourselves. Being a social animal, we need other human beings around us. Next is our desires drive us to achieve our aim. The aim defined by our desires. These aims in life may keep changing as we live our life. We can justify any of our actions. So this is another important aspect of human psychology, which we should keep in mind, particularly in terms of educating and training our children, that our aims will keep changing in our life. And if we keep that higher aim, which we define by using the Quran, that is Sirat-e-Mustaqim, and developing ourselves and then working towards a system of deen, then whatever aim we have, even under man-made system, that should fit into that. Human beings want some kind of model in life, be it parents, teachers, bosses, friends, celebrities, personalities from the past, political leaders, religious figures. And these things affect our psyche because, for example, somebody working in a political party will be all the time thinking of that political party and its interests while, of course, earning their living. Quran says that you should grow out of these man-made models of life and make Allah as your model, because human beings have a self and Allah also has a self, and since he's got an infinitely developed self, so a higher model will help us to develop our own self. Allah has taken certain responsibilities on himself in the Quran, and these are to be carried out by the Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen in the world. We need precisely that concept of Allah which is put forward by the Quran in order to acquire and develop ourselves. If we do not do this, then we cannot carry out these responsibilities. Why do we need to know Allah and His attributes? There are two kinds of companionship in the human world as per the Quran. First companionship is, and the mathematics of it, this is like an equation. Man plus man and other man, they form a finite companionship. This ends with physical death because it is based on relative values. Quran doesn't come into it. The second companionship is man plus Allah through the Quran. Eternal companionship, this must originate in this worldly life as per the guidance of the Quran. This extends eternally into the life of the hereafter. And this is what Quran calls Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen. So wherever Quran addresses Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen, we should keep it in mind that it is about the system of deen. And of course, by coming together, this Jamaat is going to establish the system of deen. The second companionship only becomes available through the guidance of the Quran. And we should be very clear about it. We have to convince ourselves by looking at the evidence for it around us. And of course, looking at our previous life when we did not come to the Quran, what kind of a self we possessed. And after coming to the Quran, what changes took place within our own self. And Quran says, هُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَكُمْ فَمِنْكُمْ كَافِرٌ وَمِنْكُمْ مُؤْمِنٌ وَاللَّهُ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ بَصِيرٌ. It is He who has created you. And that is important. We should always keep in mind that Allah has created me. Allah has created us. And there is a specific purpose attached to this creation. And this universe is making sure that whatever we do, we are held accountable for that. So this accountability should be actually a source of pleasure for us, a source of joy for us, because we know what we are doing and we know that whatever we do now, it will have positive results in the future if we are following the guidance of the Quran. And of you are some that are kafir and some that are mu'min. We should not pass through this verse just cursorily or just looking at it. That is fine, there is a kafir and mu'min. But we should pause and reflect and keep it in mind that what Quran is saying. Quran is saying that for mu'min, you have to become mu'min. وَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ وَيُؤْمِنْ بِاللَّهِ. Quran says that first you have to reject the man-made system and then have iman. And then you will join the category of being mu'min. If we haven't done that, then we are still part of the system of kufr. And some that are mu'min, and Allah sees well all that you do. And that is another thing, is that Allah knowing about it, that is fine, because it is through the law of requital. But we should also know, if we have become mu'min, that how things work and how our self is developing and how others around us are also behaving and what is their behavior. And of course, we have to point it out to them that life has a very high purpose. And if they come to this path, these are the pleasures and joys associated with following this path. Next is, for this the criterion is spelled out, for example, in verse 256 of Surah Al-Baqarah, La ikraha fid deen, qad tabayyana ar-rushdu min al-ghayy, faman yakfur bit-taghut wa yu'min billah. I've just quoted this as well. There is no compulsion in deen. Truth stands out clear from error. whoever rejects Taghut and accepts Iman in Allah. There is one point over here which I would like to emphasize is that when Quran says there is no compulsion in Deen, it means that before coming to Deen, we are not forced to join it. It is our choice. But once we have accepted Iman in Allah, then we leave the category of kufr and we enter that category which is called of mu'mineen. Then we subject ourselves to those constraints of permanent values which are going to help us to unite our hearts and then rise far higher than the level which the man-made system presents before us. Now, next slide is Allah, some comments to set the scene. What is Allah? What kind of being is He? What is the form and reality of His self? Where did He come from? These are those questions whose answers are out with the scope of human intellect. Intellect is the name of those collective outcomes which man achieves through his knowledge and observations. And it is obvious that the means through which man obtains knowledge are finite. And we can see that if we look around us. In fact, human beings have a problem in understanding the whole reality. It is the Quran which puts the whole reality before us. But we have to approach it in bits and pieces, and then, like a jigsaw puzzle, complete picture appears before us after many years of our toil and effort. So when those means are finite, then the product of those means will also be finite. And how can the finite conceive the infinite? What can that man who so far has not even been able to determine what he himself is? And we can see plenty of that evidence if we go to YouTube and, for example, search for human consciousness, and we will see that everyone who doesn't have access to the Quran is just fishing about it, and they don't know what to do with it. It's just a mystery for them. Determine as to what Allah is. Knowledge of the composition of the divine self is beyond the scope of human vision. This is the reason that the Quran does not demand visual recognition of Allah. It demands acceptance of Iman in Allah. And for that, Quran says that Allah has provided us enough cognitive power potentials which can understand at that. Because we ourselves are physical being as well as non-physical being, because all what we require to develop ourselves, our thought process, is within us. And we can't see our thoughts, we cannot see ourselves. I cannot see my own eye, but I know that I exist. So this is how Quran wants us to proceed further. And at an intellectual level, as our intellect develops, we can understand and come to grips with these concepts. The second method by which to evaluate something which man is not able to comprehend directly is to appraise something which is similar to it. However, that being, that is the self of Allah, has no example like it and is invisible. The fundamental issue is this, that Allah is invisible. And we simply cannot relate His existence, His being, to anything which is visible in the human world. There is nothing whatever like unto Him. This is what the Quran says. How can the form of Allah be envisioned by the human mind? Habituated to perceiving things via his senses, man always desires that even the most abstract realities should display before him in the physical form. And those who look for these kind of signs, they are going to be disappointed and they will be wasting their time. Because Quran is asking us to look inwards, to look at our own potentials, latent potentials which are residing within us. To do anything, we have to think about it. We have to make a choice. So choices are not visible to us, but we know that we are making choices. So that is where we have to concentrate. That is within our inner cognitive potentials. At least that this metaphysical reality should be interpreted in such a way that it can form a tangible concept in his mind. This was that fundamental error as a result of which man adopted the worship of idols. And this is a basic fact and problem of human being, that in order to look for some physical things, they started concocting these idols. They started making these statues and started worshipping them. Since Islam is a deen of intellect and reasoning, that means they have suspended their intellect and reasoning potentials. They have gone for the physical things. It therefore closed all those doors through which the paths of this kind of superstition could enter the human mind. It has not mentioned any such example about the divine self, which may, as a consequence, cause the human mind to drift towards some concrete and visible form of Allah. The Quran wishes to preserve reality as reality because that is where our eminence and loftiness lies. That is where we start looking at things which are though invisible, but those become visible through the physical signs. For example, if we look at a seed, we will never think that it is going to grow if we do not know agriculture and we have never seen a seed growing. But once we put it in the soil, provide suitable environment, it is bound to grow, which means that our self, which is invisible initially, then it becomes visible. Once it develops itself, follows the permanent values, then it becomes a different human being, what it used to be under the relative values. So all those things which this new self starts doing in the physical world, that is, for example, changes it towards the system of deen, then this becomes visible from the invisible. It does not wish to convert the divine self into a sculpture in order to fulfill a demand of the human mind. So Quran is inviting us to go towards the higher potentials, cognitive potentials of human being. And that is where everything materializes. That is where a new life appears within the physical beings called human beings. So human beings become something different from what they were. That is, they convert themselves from a state of kufr to the state of mu'min. Now, next slide is defining Ilaah. A root is given over here. The basic meaning is such an entity whose control and authority is accepted, whose law is to be followed, whose command is to be obeyed. We can look in Lugatul Quran. This root has far more meanings than what I have put on over here because my effort is to relate it to Allah. Ilahun would mean someone whose refuge may be sought in danger or someone who can be requested to save one from difficulties. And the concept of whose loftiness surprises one. And there is a lot of surprise in the concept of Ilaah because once we bring out our best, we will see that how much we have within us, which after making Allah as our model, how much of that comes out. Ilaah would mean a being whose rule must be accepted, and that is where Allah comes in, and whose laws must be followed and obeyed. A few verses. قَالَ لَإِن تَخَذْتَ إِلَٰهًا غَيْرِي لَأَجْعَلَنَّكَ مِنَ الْمَسْجُونِينَ. Pharaoh claimed, if you do put forward any ilah other than me, I will certainly put you in prison. And this is Pharaoh is addressing the messenger Musa. Next verse is رَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَٰهَهُ هَوَاهُ أَفَأَنْتَ تَكُونَ عَلَيْهِ وَكِيلًا. See you such a one as takes for his ilah his own passion. So Quran says that if you make your own desires as your ilah, even then there is a problem. If you make other human beings as ilah, then there is also a problem. If you consider your own self as ilah like Pharaoh, then there is a problem. Because there is factually only one ilah in the world, and that is Allah himself. Could you be a wakil for him? Because we have to be very alive what is going on around the world, and people who follow their desires, Quran says that if you give them a message, unless they want to come to Allah, they will keep following their own desires and they will not leave that path. Because that path is giving them pleasures, because they think that is the aim of life. And that is where these people, they suffer and do injustice to themselves. And this is another very important verse. We should remember it, 4384, because Quran says, وَهُوَ الَّذِي فِي السَّمَاءِ إِلَٰهٌ وَفِي الْأَرْضِ إِلَٰهٌ وَهُوَ الْحَكِيمُ الْعَلِيمُ. It is He who is Ilaah in the heavens and Ilaah on earth. Because Quran makes it very clear to us as students of the Quran that Allah is Ilaah. He is the ruler. He is the sovereign. He is omniscient. He is omnipotent in the world, and His laws work in the human world as well as in the outer world. And we might say that in the world we see Pharaoh's laws are working. It is man-made system, man-made laws are working. But Quran says even when you follow man-made laws, the results will be according to Allah's laws. Because if you put your finger in fire, even if you don't know fire will burn, fire will still burn you. So when you go against the laws of Allah and do not accept the rule of Allah, then your word will be just like the word of 2025. And He is Al-Hakim and Al-Alim, which means, and we will come to this once we deal with these attributes in more detail, He wants us to be Hakim as well as Alim. And Hakim means that we should know the rationale of everything which is working in the world. There is absolutely nothing in the world which cannot be understood. It will be a failure of human intellect not to know the cause of any event. Alim means to build up that knowledge to which the Quran is pointing our attention to. Now, next slide is the divine self called Allah. The Quran has used the word Allah for the divine self, i.e. Allah is the name of the self of God. And I put down God over here. I think it is taken from the book, The Human Self and Allah, because if we look at God, then we turn it into Allah, because normally it is translated as God. The description of whose attributes is spread throughout the pages of the Quran like sparkling pearls. For example, we say that Allah is Rahim, Allah is Kareem, so Rahimi and Kareemi are attributes of Allah. The view of most about this word Allah is that it is in fact a combination of Al-Ilahun. Through frequent usage, the word has gradually evolved to become Allah from Al-Ilahun. In the Arabic language, by prefixing al, a common noun becomes a proper noun. That is, al is definite article. From this perspective, the meaning of Allah will be that particular Ilaah whose concept the Quran has put forward. So from here, we should also remember that when we refer to the Quran, Allah has a specific connotation, a specific meaning. And we should preferably use Allah in our normal conversation as well with others. The focal point of the Quranic teaching is La ilaha illallah. There is no ilah but Allah. So it makes it very clear that don't make any other ilah. Make Allah as your Allah, as your model, and then see what happens to your cognition, what happens to your thinking, how elevated you will become, how eminent self you will acquire over a period of time if you do not give up. I.e., there is no such being, no such power in the universe which can be acknowledged as Ilaah. Such a being is only the one who is called Allah by the Quran. And this is the fact. Think about it, pause and reflect that Allah is a real one. He exists. He is the one who has given us this intellect which we are utilizing in sharing this presentation. So it is that fact. Anything other than that is not a fact. All these gods which human mind concocts and creates are false. And if these are residing in our mind, how can that mind develop? How can that mind expand itself? How can that consciousness acquire the concept of Allah? So that consciousness has to make itself free from all other concepts of Allah and then come to Allah and then see what change occurs, what transformation takes place within that psyche. And that is what Allah Quran calls as Mu'min. This then means that it is only the law of Allah which is such whose obedience should be adhered to in the universe, from whom the means of protection should be sought, who should be made a shield for all troubles and difficulties. And once we come to these attributes, we will figure out how to do it under the system of Deen. Now next is some attributes of real Ilaah, which are called Al-Asma'ul Husna, who gives life. And we know Quran says that Allah is Hayyul Qayyum, provider of nourishment. Quran says Allah calls himself Rabbul Alameen. And this is also provider of sustenance, who bestows peace and security. And in fact, Allah calls himself Al-Mu'min as well, who is always watching. We know Samiul Basir, who solves problems, who sets things right in all matters, in whom complete trust can be placed, who is called out in times of hopelessness. And Quran has some verses in which Quran says, when you are in trouble, you supplicate to Allah, and then once you are out of that trouble, you forget about Him. It is because human beings have to remind themselves, and that reminding is only possible when we acquire Iman and then come together and remind each other. Who has control of benefit and harm, and this is because of the law of requital. Who has knowledge of both visible and the unseen, and Quran says Allah is alimul ghaibi wa shahadatu. So He knows the unseen as well as what is happening right at this moment in the world. Who has power overall, that is, He is omnipotent. Who is owner of supremacy, that is Al-Aliyyul Azim. Who is beyond any fault, that is Al-Quddus. Master of masters, the true sovereign, for whose life there is no end, to whom all turn for help. And this is a beautiful thing over here, that if we make Allah as our model, then we have a desire to not to die. We want to have a life beyond death as well. And that is why Quran says that death is, you're going to only taste of it and then move forward. So in order to acquire that self, which has the surety of these attributes, then we come to the Quran. And this is taken from the human self and Allah. Now next is, does the Quran provide evidence of the existence of Allah? I know we have gone over it previously as well in some of our previous presentations, but I thought just to include this slide just to remind ourselves. Now over here, verse 4153 is quoted, and it provides evidence based on the outer world and details being discovered about the human psyche. And Quran says, Sanurihim ayatina fil afaqi wa fi anfusihim hatta yatabayyana lahum annahul haq. That soon these signs will appear if we study this, and particularly through the sciences, in the outer universe, that is in the physical world, and within our own psyche, that whatever is being revealed here is al-haq. And al-haq, we know, something which produces constructive results, which is a reality. There is no doubt about it. It is factual. For example, Allah Himself is al-haq. This world around us is al-haq. It is created so that everyone's deeds are recompensed for whatever they have done, and nobody is treated unjustly. It is a product of non-human intellect and thought. And we can look at the Quran and first, for example, we know how ordinary human beings who are not guided, how do they think? How do they react in the world? How do they act in the world? What kind of deeds they do? And once we see what is given in the Quran, we will see that it is quite diametrically opposite to what human beings think. For example, Quran says, وَآتَ الْمَالَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ, that despite having affection for money, you should spend it on others. Whereas we see in the word that accumulation of money is not considered wrong, and people can accumulate as much as possible. And we know that 1% at the top are holding a lot of wealth which can be utilized for the good of others, and they do not do it. And that is important because Quran wants a change within human psyche so that world becomes free from all kinds of fear and grief. Hence, nothing like this can be thought by the human mind. And it's a good exercise. We should do it. We should check that what is given in the Quran, could I think like that? And that is an important aspect to learn about the Quran and develop that conviction that this book is 100% from Allah and it is beyond human intellect to think like that. The concept of Allah presented in the Quran is based on fact, and making it a model brings about a change in the human self which cannot be acquired by any other means. There is no cognitive dissonance in this. And there is a unity of thought which develops within us, and that is why all those who become mu'min, then they come together because they have overcome on their cognitive dissonances. Those inner conflicts they have, those disappear, and as a result they can come together. There is no force of distraction between them, then there is attraction developed between them at self's level. The purpose of human creation becomes clear, therefore no doubt or uncertainty remains in the human mind. The human self witnesses the world as it should be. The self which emerges finds that no need remains to go outside the folds of the Quran. And this is a very important statement noted down over here, that once we come to the Quran and understand the Quran the way Allah wants us to understand the Quran and make Allah as our model, then ourself, all our cognitive needs are met in terms of understanding the system of deen and our status within that system of deen. So as a result, we simply do not wish to go outside the Quran. The reality of human creation, the law of requital, the link between Iman and Saleh deeds, which is a recipe, which is a formula, the need for wahi. Why do we need wahi? Because we do not have inner guidance. And if we want to be guided on that path on which there are minimum risks and we will reach our destination, which Allah has defined for us, that is in terms of our self-development. The need for the system of deen, the life of the hereafter, all this will disappear. Once we are on this path and acquire that developed self, just like we take paracetamol and headache disappears, this fear of the hereafter 100% disappears. An alternative choice to man-made systems, because we understand what hereafter is, what is accountability, and we have experienced that pleasure of holding ourselves accountable right in this world. The meaning of verse 21:10 becomes clear, which Quran says this book is sent for your own eminence, for enhancing your own value, i.e. it is about human eminence. It also becomes clear that it is all based on human choice. The focus is on our own individual self, recognizing its existence and then becoming fully conscious of its various stages of development. The bottom line is that only the Quranic Allah exists, as he has noted all the details about himself which are required to fulfill the purpose of human creation in this life. The next slide is one life, two different paths leading to different selves. So what I've done over here is that a very sketchy schematic I have drawn. There is a common path of our desires, Iblis, Shaitan. We can create our own God or select one which others are following. So this is the state of unguided, unbridled human minds. Hizb Shaitan always exists, so we join it. So all man-made systems are lumped together under Hizb Shaitan, and Shaitan means where human beings follow their own desires. They make their own desires as their Ilaah. Human self does not meet the criterion of the Quran. And this is the bottom line if we want to understand, particularly once we are explaining to others and tell them that our fate is in our own hand and it depends the kind of choices we make. So Quran is offering us a different choice from the man-made system. Choice to follow path of Allah, which is given in the Quran. Concept of Allah is the one which tells us that we need a higher model for our self-development. We rise above the man-made system. We rise above the men around us who are equal like us. We are not fearful of any human being, never mind whether he or she is the Pharaoh of the world. Concept of Allah which leads to Hizbullah, that is this Jamaat. This Jamaat of Hizb Shaitan already exists. It never disappears because this is the way man-made system is. But Hizbullah has to be created. Hizbullah, precisely defined in the Quran, self meets the criterion of the hereafter. So this self then becomes fully 100% assured that the path it has adopted in the light of the Quran, and by coming together has acquired that self which will go on developing beyond death. Two different choices, two different selves emerge, clearly distinguishable. In fact, in all cases, since all human beings come to the Quran through their own volition at some point in time, whether earlier or later, they can always differentiate the later self which they acquire as a moment, they can differentiate from the one which they had before coming to the Quran. Next slide is real concept of Allah. Truth, Allah is far above these attributes which the human mind has carved and then attributed to him. The correct concept of Allah can only emerge before us according to those attributes which are noted in the Quran, because there has been no contamination of these by human ideas and beliefs. And we have seen it for example, in the case of permanent values. that all those permanent values are totally different from the relative values. These values are immutable and equally applicable to first man and the last man. And these attributes, we will also see that how these are applicable in terms of developing ourselves and how these will be applicable to the system of deen in terms of our conduct and character. And this is the reason that the Quran does not accept the Iman in Allah of these people who have Iman in God according to their own concept. And Quran says, فَإِنْ آمَنُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا آمَنْتُمْ بِهِ فَقَدْ اهْتَدَوْا وَإِنْ تَوَلُّوا فَإِنَّمَا هُمْ فِي شِقَاقٍ فَسَيَكْفِيكَهُمُ اللَّهُ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. So if they have Iman as you have Iman, and this is a very important point because over here it is in reference to the Messenger of Allah. But Messenger of Allah is not now among us. So we have to figure out our own self. So it is the duty of those who have understood it that they should explain it to others that this is what Iman of Allah means and this is how it brings change within our own psyche. This is how we become different human being and this is how we will fit into the program of Allah. There is nothing feeling some kind of hesitation in it or feeling ashamed of it. It is not about self-projection. It is about getting all those together who can establish the system of deen. So we should develop enough courage that if we have understood this, then we should be able to explain it to others. And if there are any doubts, then this should be discussed. And that is why we have this platform to discuss these things so that we don't feel hesitant, we don't feel ashamed, we don't say that, oh, what will others think that I don't know this much even? No, we are here to fit ourselves into that program which is put forward by Allah in the book of Allah. So over here we are not trying to put down each other, but over here we have a common cause, a very high goal, a very lofty aim in front of us. And this life is one-way street. We do not want to waste it. We want to get maximum out of it using the Quran. They are indeed on the right path, but if they turn back, it is they who are in schism. And this will always happen that if we haven't acquired the Iman of Allah, then we will become sectarian, we will have parties, we will have schism within us. Because if we have dissonance within us, how are we going to solve the problems of the world which are created by human dissonances? But Allah will suffice you against them, and He is Sami and Alim. Two attributes have come over here, and I have highlighted it, that we have to listen very carefully to everything. For example, that what is going on in the world, we should listen to others as well and see how things happen, because we have to hold ourselves accountable. And Alim means that Sami, this perception adds to our knowledge. Next verse is Fatiru samawati wal arde ja'alakum min anfusikum azwajum min al-anami azwajan yazra'ukum fihe laysa kamithlihi shay'un wa huwal samiul basir. The creator of the heavens and the earth from nothing, He has made for you pairs from among yourselves and pairs among cattle. Because over here it's very important that we should understand that the concept of Allah which is given in the Quran and in which we have acquired Iman, He has created this world from nothing. So He creates from nothing. This is one of His attributes. And we, since we also have divine energy, so we create from something which is already available. We can look around in the world, everything man has created from those materials which are available in the earth, and Allah knew that they are going to create. So Allah also knows what else we are going to create. So the issue over here is that are we creating that new self within us for which we have been provided all the material, that is our senses, our cognitive powers, and our body, and we can do all that and understand it just to create a new self within us whose model is Allah Himself, and then come together. So when Allah says that your hearts will be united, that means there is a capability, there is a potential within us to unite our hearts with those who have also created this life and have become mu'min. He has made for you pairs from among yourselves and pairs among cattle. This is based on evidence. By this does He multiply you. There is nothing whatsoever like unto him. So Quran says, stop worrying about it. Don't think about it. Your job is to create this new life, come together, unite your hearts, and then see how the signs noted in the Quran will start telling you that your path is the correct one. And he's the one who is Sami and Basir. So over here, hearing and seeing both have appeared. So we have to become more alive to our hearing, and we should start seeing those things which we have failed to see previously. And this is only possible through using the lens of the Quran, because it is a value-based judgment which Quran allocates to us. It makes us see things which are not visible to those human beings who are not on the path of the Quran. And that is how we should explain it to others as well, that there are far more pleasures and certainty concealed within the message of the Quran than human beings can find out at their own without the help of the Quran. So a lot of latent potentials, they are not able to bring them out unless they come to the Quran. Now next is Allah sharing some of his attributes for deen. And over here I've quoted this verse which is normally called Ayatul Kursi. Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum la ta'khuzuhu sinatun wa la nawm lahu ma fis samawati wa ma fil ard man zallazi yashfa'u indahu illa bi'iznihi ya'lamu ma bayna aydihim wa ma khalfahum wa la yuhituna bi shay'in min ilmihi illa bima sha'a wasi'a kursiyyuhu as-samawati wal ard wa la ya'uduhu hifzuhuma wa huwa al-aliyyul azim. So this is called Ayatul Kursi because of the word Kursiyuhu used in this verse. Allah, there is no Ilaah but He, the living, the self-subsisting and eternal. No slumber can seize Him nor sleep. All in the heavens and earth belongs to Him. Who can do shafaat in His presence except as per His law? And shafaat over here means somebody standing up for with others for the good they are doing. So, for example, even as a witness, are supporting them in their good efforts. He knows what is before or behind or after them, nor shall they compass aught of his knowledge except as per his mashiyat, that is according to his law. His authority does extend over the heavens and the earth, and he guards it untiringly, and is the most high and the supreme. And there is a lot explained over here about Allah himself, and it's a very powerful verse. Some characteristics of the system of deen, some reflections on this verse. Now we will look at that how all these attributes which are mentioned over here by Allah himself, how these can be made applicable to the system of deen. First is Tawheed, that is, there is oneness of law in the outer world as well as within the human self and human world. Fully alive to the needs of everyone and fully established. That is Hayyul Qayyum. Never lacks and works 24/7. That means the system of deen will also work 24/7 and human beings will work in shifts. So it will be a fully alive system which man has never seen under the man-made system. And we should think about it, that how will we create it? Fully cognizant of the word. The law of requital and justice will prevail. Fully aware and has an eye on the future. The hereafter forms part of this. Research and development, every field of life. And there are so many fields of particularly human psyche which needs to be explored using the Quran. Uses full authority as bestowed by the Quran, and that is where Aziz and Hakim comes in. No thought of giving up or of frustration. So men of Allah simply cannot give up. They stay motivated because they are not alone. They have accepted the companionship of Allah. Untiring, no holiday concept at the top level. Because initially this system will require so much devotion and dedication that people, those who are managing this system, will be totally engrossed in it. Control and supremacy displayed, true character attributes. So there is a lot, we can go through it in our own time. What options do we have? Option 1, accept the existing forms of the capitalist system and to not think of any alternative, just remain a beneficiary of this system Whatever beliefs we have, just live with these. Most follow this line of thinking. Next option is accept the existing system and consider some adjustments within this so that some redistribution of wealth can take place. Study the Quran from an academic view and feel free to give opinions on its various aspects. Discuss its contents which interest us endlessly. Never think of the system of deen or give it lip service, and never consider the possibility of its emergence. Despite reading all the verses which point directly to its need, be aware of the law of requital but never fully follow it. Mix own desires in the Quranic value system. And because people in the religious domain or other domains know cause and effect, but they never think of their own accountability. And they think they are only accountable as long as they do not go outside the man-made system and its laws. For example, living in a country, just follow the laws made by the parliament over there and think that I am safe. Quran says no, all these laws are unjust in the first place. Option 3, reject the man-made systems, including the existing forms of the capitalist system. Through reading about deen, feel encouraged to delve deeper into its details and work willingly together with those who also are making efforts in this direction. Join the platform of Tolu Islam and strengthen it with thought and might. I put down Tolu Islam over here because in my own research and in my own work, I've not seen anyone else across the world who are working towards the system of deen as given in the Quran. So Tolu Islam is the only organization which is looking at the pure Quran and its application towards the system of deen. Take a leading role. Become fully convinced that Allah's help can be acquired if we follow the Quranic formula for the system of deen. And in any case, if there is some other organization as well, then Tolu Islam and that organization must merge together because they have one aim. Mu'mineen are never divided. Under option 3, think and reflect to discover the concept of Allah which will help to achieve this goal of the system of deen. Then approach the Quran and learn how the factual concept of Allah precisely relates to the system of deen in this life and the life of the hereafter. Now next it is about the human eminence, that is dhikr. And this verse I have already quoted and we have also gone over it a number of times previously. لَقَدْ أَنزَلْنَا عَلَيْكُمْ كِتَابًا فِيهِ ذِكْرُكُمْ أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. We have sent down for you a book in which is your dhikr. That is, there is a formula for your eminence, for your loftiness. Will you not then use aql? And then Quran says, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu idha nudiya lis-salati min yawmil jum'ati fas'aw ila zikrillah. So over here Quran says zikrukum, over it says zikrullah. So that means once these mu'mineen become companions of Allah, then Allah's zikr becomes their own zikr. And this is important. That is the way we should study the Quran. That Quran is for establishing the system of deen as guided by Allah. And Allah's help is, or His law's help is continuously available because He is with us wherever we are. Wazarul bay, zalikum khairul lakum in kuntum talamun. So over here what I've done is I have highlighted khair. Khair means all those deeds which enhance the sphere of our consciousness, which gives us far more control in terms of understanding the human world, which a non-Quranic mind simply cannot grasp it. O Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen, when the call for Jummah, that is collective meeting, is proclaimed, hasten earnestly to dhikr of Allah, that is towards what is being discussed in that meeting, and leave off business that is best for you if you knew. For example, today we are sharing what is the concept of Allah given in the Quran and its salient aspects. So this meeting has been called with a view to discuss the concept of Allah. Next is Awajibtum an ja'akum zikrum min rabbikum ala rajulin minkum liyunzirakum wa litattaqu wa la'allakum turhamun. Do you wonder that there has come to you dhikr from your Rabb through a man from among you to warn you, so that you become muttaqi and thus receive rahmat. A number of points given over here that dhikr, this Quran, and whatever is given in the Quran in relation to the system of deen is from your Rabb, and Rabb is related to Rububiyat, so that that system of sustenance and nourishment can be established, which is called deen. And it has come through a man. Whatever messengers did, we all can do. We all have similar abilities. We also were born biologically exactly like them. So if we think we cannot do it, then we are actually demeaning ourselves. We think that we are not capable enough to accept the message of the Quran and then act on it. And why it is لِيُنذِرَكُمْ, so that we can warn others. And that means if we know that what is the importance of this book, only then we can warn others that if we do not follow this book, what kind of a world we will create. وَلَيْتَتَّقُوا, and we know what muttaqi is, وَلَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ, and that is how we get Allah's rahmat and all the means for developing ourselves and for creating a world in which needs of everyone are met. That is both the needs of the self as well as of the body. Fazkuruni azkurkum washkuruli wala takfurun. And Quran says, if you keep this law of Allah before you, then Allah will protect your rights and will bestow on you eminence and elevation. And over here Quran says that Allah is saying, Fazkuruni, if you take care of my dhikr, then He will be taking care of your zikr. And this is where exactly what I pointed out earlier, that this book is in which there is a zikrukum, and then Quran says, Ilaah zikrullah. So both have come together as companions over here. And then Quran says, hence you need to value this supreme favor. Do not let this code disappear from your eyes. And Quran says, washkuruli, that is do shukr. Shukr means to bring out our best in the light of the Quran, and do not do kufr. Don't resort to rejecting. So shukr has come as opposite of kufr. And we remember that Mu'min and Kafir have appeared against each other in one of our previous verses. So we should keep in mind and concentrate on this, and not to get lost in these words in our day-to-day life. We should also be very precise in using Quranic verses and Quranic words in our daily living as well. We should never ever use those words in our common conversations which are not meant to be used over there. Next is, for deen, learn to refer back to the Quran. And this is an important aspect, that once we have developed ourselves to a higher level of development, or should I say manifestation of our character in the outer world, then we should go back to the Quran in everything we do. We should also look at our own thought process in the light of the Quran, so that we make ourselves fit into the program of Allah. And Quran says, وَمَا أَخْتَلْتَفْتُمْ فِيهِ مِنْ شَيْءٍ فَحُكْمُهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ ذَلِكُمُ اللَّهُ رَبِّي عَلَيْهِ تَوَكَّلْتُ وَعَلَيْهِ أُنِيبُ. Whatever it be wherein you differ, the decision thereof is with Allah. Such is Allah, my Rabb. In Him I trust, and to Him I turn. And obviously I can only have a trust in Allah and turn to Him if I know about the Quran and what it means. Next is, مَا تَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِهِ إِلَّا أَسْمَاءً سَمَّيْتُمُوهَا أَنْتُمْ وَآبَاؤُكُمْ مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ بِهَا مِن سُلْطَانٍ إِنَّ الْحُكْمُ إِلَّا لِلَّهِ أَمَرَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّهُ ذَلِكَ الدِّينُ الْقَيِّمُ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. And this is from Surah Yusuf. If not Him, you obey nothing but names which you have named, you and your fathers, for which Allah has sent down no authority. And we can see all these kinds of beliefs and names being used under the domain of the sectarian Islam. The command is for none but Allah. He has commanded that you obey none but Him, that is, follow His laws. That is the established deen. And we can see Al-Qayyimu from Allah, Hayyul Qayyum. But most human beings understand not, because they have to gain knowledge, they have to show interest, and then they have to become Sami'ul Basir and listen, and then become Alimul Hakim. That is, they have to increase their knowledge in order to benefit from the Quran. And this is another very interesting verse which we should keep in mind, 29:51. Awalam yakfihim anna anzalna alaykal kitaba yutla alayhim inna fi zalika la rahmatan wa zikra liqawmi yu'minun. Is it not enough that we have sent down to you the book which is recited to them? And if we know that in the sectarian Islam they say this book is not enough, this book is not complete, we have to go outside the book to enhance our knowledge, to enhance our psyche, so that it can solve the problems of the world. It can never ever solve the problem. Any psyche which goes outside the Quran and thinks Quran is not enough, they haven't understood the basics of the book of Allah. Verily in it is rahmat and dhikr for those who are mu'mineen. This is beautiful part of it. Inna fi zalika la rahmatan wa zikra liqawmi yu'minun. Once we become mu'min, then we understand what this verse means. Next slide is what is wrong with shirk. And Quran says, Qul innama ana basharum mithlukum yuha ilayya annama ilahukum ilahun wahidun. فَمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو لِقَاءَ رَبِّهِ فَلْيَعْمَلْ عَمَلًا صَالِحًا وَلَا يُشْرِكْ بِعِبَادَاتِ رَبِّهِ أَحَدًا. Say, I am but a man like you. The wahy has come to me that your Ilaah is one Ilaah. Whoever expects to meet his Rabb, let him do salih deeds, and in the obedience of his Rabb admit no partner. A few points to note over here. The messenger is a physical being just like any other human being with a developed self. So a messenger looks like an ordinary human being, but with a developed self, he becomes a mu'min, he is on khulqun azim. And that is what we should keep in mind. That once we come to the Quran and raise the understanding and develop ourselves to a higher level, we can be model for others, human beings who have yet to come to the Quran. So we can explain to them and tell them that, look, the world in which we are living, it can be turned into a better word by using the Quran. As the Quran is for every human being who is looking for guidance. The Quran presents the details of the formula for the establishment of deen. The formula is precise and will produce the same results as noted within it in for all times. It is not time barred. And that is another important point, that this formula produced certain kinds of results in the initial era of Islam, and it still has the potential to produce exactly the same results if human beings with a developed self called mu'mineen come together and work on this formula together. Those who wish to benefit from this need to acquire Iman as noted within the Quran. The formula includes details of the law of requital, and that is where it means liqa'a rabbihi. That if you want to meet the consequences of your deeds and you are aware of it, then that means you are interested in establishing the system of deen. Doing salih deeds is an intrinsic part of the formula, because through these salih deeds we bring out our best, the potentials for which exist within each one of us, but we are not aware of them because these things are at subconscious level or unconscious level. So Quran gives us the procedure to bring it out, and obviously we cannot bring it out unless we desire to bring them out. No contamination whatsoever is allowed in the formula, and this is called shirk. Shirk means that if we have a contaminated mind, we will not come to the Quran. Even if we have come to the Quran, we will never understand the system of deen because we are looking at its value system with a contaminated mind. And a contaminated formula is of no use to the system of deen. That is what shirk means. Quran has certain benefits associated with its message built into it. And if we want to access those benefits, then we have to come to it with that cognition which is free from any kind of contamination called shirk. That is bringing into it man-made systems desires or our own desires and our own biases. Over here, Quran is asking us to come to Allah as and become his companion the way he has asked us to become. That is why Quran says, Allahu waliyul lazina amanu yukhrijuhum minal zulumat ilan nur. So all the darknesses which are residing within our psyche, we have to illuminate those using the Quranic light and then get rid of them. Displaying shirk means that the benefits of the Quran cannot become available. Now, next verse is, for man not to be subservient to another man, only through accepting the rule of Allah can the best in a human being emerge. And Quran says, Summa madraka ma yawmuddin. Again, what will explain to you what the day of deen is? Day of deen over here means that era in which the deen will be established. Yawma la tamliku nafsun le nafsin shay'an wal amru yawma is illallah. The day when no self shall have power over another self. For the amr that day will be with Allah. That is, Allah will be the ruler in that land, and all those mu'mineen will establish the system on behalf of Allah in His presence, because He is present everywhere all the time, and then follow the book of Allah. So no man will ask another man to obey his laws. In fact, these human beings, these Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen, is that which will have absolutely zero interest in controlling other human beings by making human laws. They will make themselves totally free from this desire, absolutely no desire, because they know that this desire will take them to hell. This is a satanic desire. This is an Iblisi desire to control other human beings. The control in that land will be directly with Allah through Allah's book. 2 points to be noted. The criterion for recognizing the era of deen, when no human being will be subjected to any man-made law. And this is something in our own time we should sit down and think for half an hour, that what it means to be a totally free human being under the direct supervision rule of Allah. There is absolutely no veil, no curtain between Allah and man. And this is what it means. And the associated pleasure and joy with that, I think we need to sit down and think of it and feel that projected pleasure. In deen, the command will be that of Allah. Those possessing Quranic selves will manage the affairs of deen on behalf of Allah. The Quran will serve as the constitution. How simple that life will be, that Quran is the constitution. Such a beautiful book with all attributes of Allah, all His laws, life so simplified, and with those developed selves to the highest eminent level which human beings can acquire in this life, which Quran calls as khulqun azim. Now next is, Islam is a code of life. Its constituents are based on the wahi of Allah, a complete, immutable, preserved code of life, the Quran, which encompasses all aspects of life and which is beyond the confines of time and space. It is a torch of guidance for the whole of mankind. One ummah consisting of those who have iman in the truth of this code of life, which is far above race, tribal, or nationalistic prejudices. There is no sect in it, no party. So that means mu'mineen must be very uncomfortable with the issue of race, tribal, nationalistic prejudices, any discrimination on the basis of age or gender or any other man-made divisions, which human beings are very good at creating those divisions. This ummah has a state in which this code of life acquires the shape of a practical system. A central authority of this state consisting of this Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen, whose hearts are united and they know the constitution of Allah and are fully 100% committed to it, which is responsible for the establishment of this system on Quranic lines, and a physical center of this state, which is called the Kaaba, and whose initiation into existence occurred through the hands of Ibrahim. Just imagine that if this system was established, and all the wealth which lies in, for example, in Saudi Arabia, all was used towards the good of mankind, and UNO was established in Mecca, what kind of a world will emerge from that? The point to note is item 4 requires selves for the central authority. Each one of these selves needs to be a very high eminence which consistently meets the Quranic criteria and not mechanically forced on them, but willingly and enjoying each bit of it. Each day within this system, all these individuals have to enjoy, and that is how Allah then manifests His light into the world. And finally, schematic illustration. I've drawn a schematic illustration over here. Part of it was shared previously as well, but I thought to share it again. The law of requital works throughout the universe, and we know that all these laws made by Allah are uniformly across the whole of the universe. And this is our death, and then through this law of requital, which will decide that what kind of a self we have acquired, whether we go beyond it or we end up with our death. Path without the guidance of the Quran, without the light of the Quran, ends with death. There is nothing beyond it. We should be very clear on that, because Allah doesn't come into it. And this is the state of most of the humanity as of today. Path defined by the Quran becomes available to those who make this choice. And this choice only is made available by the Quran. We have gone over it previously as well, but it is good to keep reminding ourselves. And few rise to this initially, but then once the message spreads, then many more join it as well, because we have to explain to them. Once a model is established, then human beings know that there are far more benefits attached with this model than the man-made system. Allah with all attributes using the Quran as light. Even for them, this path ends with death, but over here, what happens is, since they have come to this, they use the light of the Quran and they can see those things which they couldn't see previously. And this is how they overcome this impediment and keep proceeding together to the next life. Thanks for your time and for sharing this today. Please feel free to share it with your contacts. You may like to subscribe for future talks related to the Quranic system of Deen.